Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about Copilot, Cursor, and Claude Code. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what do you think about AI coding tools like Copilot, Cursor, and Claude Code? Well, that is a pretty good question. I would say that, like, full disclosure, guys, like for me, the the thing is, AI and like so forth, like there are a range of tools on the market, and I mean I haven't used Cursor or Claude Code or anything like that. I've used Copilot, and my one of my favorite tools is to use ChatGPT, for example. And for the most part, like I don't really have anything bad to say about AI. The thing that I usually address when people ask me about, you know, what are things we should be looking out for? Is AI going to steal our jobs? These sorts of things and so forth. It has to do with the perception that a lot of software developers have, and that is that AI will in some way be a threat to you. And so the thing that I argue is that this is you sort of letting your emotions run a little bit wild, and it's a little bit you getting caught up in the trends. And I'd like to think, at the very least, that we would be a little bit better at like sort of separating what is probably true versus what's probably more scare tactics and hype and things like that. Because, I mean, I would understand it if it had come from someone who has no software experience, don't know anything about AI or anything like that. Like, you know, my relatives who may not be as into programming as I am and trends like that. Like my mother told me that AI worries her. Now, she is a retired woman who has never ever done any type of work where AI would be a serious threat to her career prospects. And so I asked her, like, what is it that you are afraid of? Oh, it's going to take our jobs. And I go, you think it's going to take over your work? Like AI isn't able to do the stuff that you're doing, like working in a shop and like things like that. Like we're talking about the small business, right? I That's something I understand, but for you as a professional software developer, I highly suggest that you take a little bit of time and reflect on what AI can do. So, just I'll give you an example of how I use AI, right? So, yesterday I had a project that I started working on. That project had basically like it was just me making like I was making a small CLI actually for this YouTube channel where the idea I had was basically that I wanted to create a CLI that as much as possible automates a lot of the stuff that I might have to do in order to make these sorts of videos and stuff like that. And you know, it's basically just a bunch of scripts that do like post processing on audio and stuff like that. And I even took it as far as to automate how to create thumbnails and all that sort of stuff. Right now, because that is a greenfield project, it was an absolute delight to do that with AI assistance. Now, the main reason why that is because there was a bunch of libraries that I've never used before in order to do things like putting images and together, like for the thumbnail, and putting the text there, and like so forth and so forth. So that was really, really helpful for me because ChatGPT in this case, and like I could have used Copilot instead, basically had the necessary knowledge to tell me, okay, what libraries do you need to use, and what do you need to like, what type of mathematics, or like so because as you can imagine, when you're positioning things on a 2D canvas, you're gonna have to do some positioning and rotations and stuff like that. That went like that, like it was like nothing. Like it took me, I'm pretty sure that had I done that from scratch, and that includes learning the library and like all that sort of stuff, that code that was written, although maybe not the most sophisticated thing in the world, would have taken me probably a few days to do. No full disclosure, because basically I'd never worked with it, and then on top of course debugging, like positioning and stuff like that, and there were some dynamic calculations necessary as well based on the content, because when I put text on the screen, right, I want to make sure that it fits the screen and things like that, right? So that was something that AI did really, really well. And so I personally love working with AI for these such use cases. However, the thing that most people I think don't understand is that even though I used AI to do all that work and it saved me a ton of time and it was super helpful, I still needed to know what was necessary for the AI to do. I needed to know what to tell it, because I mean it didn't write all the code for me, like the CLI setup and like all that stuff. Maybe I could have done that with AI too. Like I probably could have, but I did it for myself. Like, 'cause, I mean, I have years of experience setting things up, so I know how I like things to be. So I structured my folders. I set up. It was a .NET project, and I structured it as I wanted to, and then I had some functions that I wrote and sort of right. But the thing that it helped me with was like those specific processing functions and things like that, and so it saved me a ton of time. But I'm even though it did so much for me, I never ever, not once, thought to myself, oh shit, this thing is going to take my job. The reason being, because as I've said on many occasions before, guys, that from the perspective of an employer or from the industry or so forth, there's a pretty big leap between doing something that I was doing and having a complete, like again, my mother, a good example, or someone who has at least some vague knowledge of computers. Like, basic knowledge of computers will not give you the necessary insights so that you can tell the AI and give it feedback on the results that you are getting. Now, in theory, you don't need any coding knowledge whatsoever to make the thing that I was making, for example. But as you can imagine, it's pretty hard for you to give the AI feedback on the things that is working and the things that are not working. Because I can tell you right now that I had to tell, in this case, ChatGPT quite a few times and remind it what the code was doing and like give it feedback on the code that it wrote, because it didn't do it flawlessly. I had more than a few situations where there was like basic compilation errors, where like it was using interfaces that weren't there anymore. The code for the library that I was using was using like an outdated version, which I could ignore because I was lazy, and so forth and so forth. So there was a ton of stuff that I needed to give it some suggestions myself on how to rectify that I knew about. And so we had a bit of a nice collaboration session going, but it was not it was not at the level that I argue it would have to be in order to be a serious threat to you as a software developer. That level, I argue, is at the level of a calculator. Now the reason why I argue that is because if you think back, before we had calculators, basically what we did was to do arithmetic on paper. And as you can imagine, if you have complicated calculations that you need to do, that's going to be a little bit tricky for the average person to do, and so you might have people who are more sophisticated than that. And then calculators come along and they become so accessible and safe to use that we basically we just trust whatever the answer is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have thought to myself, maybe I should double check if the calculator got the answer right, because I'm not sure if its math is up to snuff right. We basically trust whatever the calculator is telling us, regardless of if it's right or wrong, because it's such a trusted way of doing mathematics, right, or doing calculations. And that is the level, I argue, roughly, that AI needs to reach. It has to be trustworthy enough that the average person feels completely comfortable with whatever it is doing, more or less, because we're getting there. And the second thing is that it has to be so easy to use that it's easier for an average person, or more affordable if you think about it from a business perspective, to have an average Joe person or someone with less, not that much experience, as we did with mathematics, right, to just use that device, and then instead of having to hire a mathematician, or in this case a professional software developer, you can hire someone who is of less skill or less experience with, so forth and so forth, and use AI instead. But for now, at least I'm having the greatest time. I'm just I love everything about AI. As I said, the only thing I'm sort of sad about is that it is not so reliable that I can't just do whatever with it. But I'm using it extensively in my work, and I suggest that you do the same thing, because it's not a threat to your livelihood. On the contrary, I think that if you give it a chance, it's going to help you a lot with a lot of things that you may. I'm thinking of new things all the time that AI can make much easier for me or give me great suggestions on, and so forth and so forth. But I never sit around and just see oh shit, this is getting too powerful, guys, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So, what I want you to take away from this is that me personally, I use, for the most part, I use ChatGPT, and that is just because it was the first thing that I started using. But Copilot is definitely, I have a request now actually from my company where we have some projects that they would like me to sort of just basically write with Copilot or use Copilot in order, because as you can imagine, for large enterprises, they're super like paranoid about code ownership and copyright and stuff like that. So we just recently got like the go ahead to use Copilot for production software and things like that. So now at work, I'm pretty sure that we're going to start moving towards basically having some software developers, so like myself or like I work as a principal software engineer, so my role basically becomes to, all right, let's make sure that this is something that's going to work and sort of figure out some best practices and stuff like that and so forth. So we're probably going to start doing more experiments with Copilot. From private projects, as I said, guys, most of the time I get by on a free account on ChatGPT, because it is that like I use AI extensively in quite a lot of situations, but it's not something I use so frequently that I have to have a paid license. I have one that I used on specific occasions and so forth, but for the most part, it's something that I use often, but it's not something that I use as a substitute. And that's the thing that I think that you should think about the most here, and that is that the AI is at this level not a substitute for your knowledge. It's a great complement to it. It's going to help you with a lot of stuff, but you can't just let it do all your thinking for it, because it's not at the level of a calculator where that is practically possible. And that is why I think that you should, like, at least the people who are a little bit not scared about it and so forth, try to calm down a little bit. It's not something that's just going to take your job away, or it's going to ruin your future if you're studying to become a programmer or something like that. It's something that you should try out, because to me it's a great tool to use and it helps me quite a lot, but I'm not scared of it. Have a great day.